Welcome back, friends, or if you're new here, welcome. I am so excited to talk about all of these books today. It was hard to narrow down to just 26 books. I mean, just fantasy alone, I thought I could make this video and just talk about 26 fantasy books I wanted to read. Don't worry, I have a range of genres that I'm going to be talking about today and narrowed it down to the ones that I'm really excited to get to, that I'm almost experiencing like decision paralysis because there are so many books that I just can't wait to read. It's hard to just pick one. So we are going to start with the largest category, and that is romantasy. I have 8 books that I'm wanting to read in this category. And the first book to start off is Heavenly Bodies by Amani Ereo. I have started to hear more and more about this book, and I want to jump on the train of reading this. It's a romantasy, enemies to lovers, but it's set in this Greek mythology-like world where the stars are gods and this type of celestial magic system, and it just sounds so unlike any magic system I've read yet. Aww, I got a little bit of damage in my backpack because I did take this with me over Christmas break and just hadn't had a chance to read it yet. But I am really excited. This will probably be the first one I get to this year. And then we have Trial of the Sun Queen by Nisha J. Tooley. The main thing that is pulling me towards this is just the trial element. I love that in a fantasy book, but it's a competition for the king's heart with a bunch of women. So sounds kind of like The Selection, but just take it up a notch and throw in a deadly competition. But I also know that this book is a series, so if I really enjoy it, then I have 3 other books I have to pick up. And then a book that came out this last year is Shield of Sparrows by Devney Perry, and I've heard nothing but good things about this book, and yet haven't read it yet. I think the size intimidates me a little bit, but the plot is really interesting. It's based around a woman who has like an arranged marriage with, I believe, a prince from another kingdom. Yeah, the day a prince walked into my father's throne room and ruined my life, the day I married a stranger, signed a magical treaty in blood, and set off across the continent to the most treacherous kingdom in all the realm. But there's monsters in it, and instead of being a damsel in distress, she's a damsel who saves herself. This will definitely be another one I'm reading as soon as possible. Honestly, it may be a race to see which one I'm most interested to pick up. And then for a few series that I've heard so much about for several years now, I just haven't made them my priority. The first of which would be The One Dark Window duology by Rachel Gillig. I am so intrigued by a gothic fantasy type of environment, and the magic system in this book revolves around cards, and our female main character has like this voice or monster in her head that she's trying to like, I guess, escape or rid herself from. Rachel Gillig is actually coming to an event in Nashville this next summer, so I definitely have to read this duology and her other book that came out last year, Night in the Moth, before she comes. And then we have Throne of Glass by Sarah J. Maas. I simply haven't gotten to this book yet because I'm intimidated by an 8-book series and also a little confused what book is best to start and what order to read the Massiverse in. I read the first 3 books in the ACOTAR series, so all I have left now is A Court of Frost and Starlight and A Court of Silver Flames. A Court of Frost and Starlight I know is supposed to be like a fluffy novella, but it's been really hard for me to get through, and I've heard mixed things about A Court of Silver Flames, whereas Throne of Glass is a series I'm really interested in reading, so I'm curious if I can just go into this having only read the first 3 books in the ACOTAR series and then pick up A Court of Frost and Starlight and A Court of Silver Flames after the Throne of Glass series. Also, there's so much debate online on when to read Assassin's Blade, so it's just, again, decision paralysis. So much hesitation to read it, I guess, the correct way or the most enjoyable way. And then we have Once Upon a Broken Heart by Stephanie Garber. I read Caraval 2 years ago. Has it really been 2 years? I read the Caraval series 2 years ago with the intention of reading that series first before going into this one, and I haven't read this one yet, so I am really excited. I think I'm gonna read this in February. This feels like a springtime, maybe good Valentine's Day read, and I've heard it's just more of that like lighthearted, cozy type of fantasy world, so really excited to read this. Also, Stephanie Garber is another author that's coming to Nashville for the same event Rachel Gillig will be at. So, and then we have Wild Reverence by Rebecca Ross, and I read Divine Rivals and Ruthless Vows again 2 years ago, and this is her book that came out this past fall, and it is a prequel to that series, so I am really excited to not only dive back into this world, but back into Rebecca Ross's writing, because I really loved Divine Rivals. Like, that is one of my top favorite romantasy books that I've read so far. So I may have this book too hyped up in my brain, but it is one I'm excited to read. And then finally, we have A Dance of Lives by Brittany Arena. And this book I actually hadn't heard about at all until I saw Rachel Catherine talking about it. But I believe it's about a dancer who was thrown in the king's dungeons for something she didn't do. And then later he asked her to be a spy and infiltrate like another kingdom, but that other kingdom is the king's brother. So there's kind of this rivalry between the two of them. I just love like secrets and kingdom politics in fantasy tales. So hearing Rachel Catherine talk about this book, I knew it was one I'd want to pick up. And I actually picked this up at Powell's over in Portland, Oregon, when my husband and I were making a trip to see a couple friends. So really excited to get to this book. And that concludes our romantasy section, but we still have more books that I would categorize as just fantasy. Maybe they're lighter on the romance or don't have any, but it's not like a core part of the plot. The first being Emily Wilde's Encyclopedia of Fairies. I know this book has romance, but I've heard it be more of like a lighter romance. It's mainly a cozy fantasy. I'm excited to read something that's not so heavy, because a lot of the fantasy books I read have a lot of weight to them. To read something that's just cozy, can cuddle up with, and isn't a lot for my brain to process. It sounds like a nice break. On the flip side, we have Jade City by Fonda Lee, which is a book, again, I've heard about online, but I just haven't dove into yet. I did try to read, I think, the first couple of chapters and just didn't immediately click with it, but it is one that the magic system is so unique, and the writing, I can tell, is really good just from the couple chapters I have read. It's a city that's like reminiscent of, it says Hong Kong gangster films, but there's like these warring, I guess you could say, mafia groups, and the main magic system is operated on jade. New like generations vying for control of this city. It just sounds so fun and kind of gives me like a similar vibe as Six of Crows, just in that exciting adventure crime landscape, and you're getting multiple perspectives of these different outlaws coming together. It just sounds fun, but definitely heavy on the magic system and world building. And then we have The Bone Season by Samantha Shannon. I'm gonna be honest, I don't remember basically anything about this book, but I've heard great things about this author, and I wanted to get more into some heavier fantasy books now that I feel like I've waded into the waters of fantasy, and I just love that genre. So I'm going to read the back real quick. And it says, "Welcome to Sion, no safer place. The year is 2059. For 2 centuries, the Republic of Sion has led an oppressive campaign against unnaturalness in Europe. In London, Paige Mahoney holds a high rank in the criminal underworld. The right hand of the ruthless white binder, Paige is a dream walker, a rare and formidable kind of clairvoyant. Under Sion law, she commits treason simply by breathing. When Paige is arrested for murder, she meets the mysterious founders of Sion, who have designs on her uncommon abilities. If she is to survive and escape, Paige must use every skill at her disposal and put her trust in someone who ought to be her enemy." Again, crime underworld in a fantasy setting. So fun. Also, I really like the idea of dream walking as a magical ability and would love to read more books like that. And again, heavy on the world building. I want to dip my toe into the world of Brandon Sanderson, and I've heard that Mistborn is the best place to start. So this is definitely on my list for 2026. I listened to his lecture series that he re-uploaded, I think last spring, from his sci-fi and fantasy writing class, and everything he had to say was really interesting, and so I want to actually read some of his work. I'm sure this will just be the start of many other books that I know are a part of the Cosmere. And then we have Blood Over Brighthaven by M.L. Wong. I have not read any books by M.L. Wong, but this one sounds so intriguing. It is a witch academy or magic academy, I think. Only men can practice there. So our female main character is the first woman to be invited to practice magic. So there's this like dark academia magic university and like secret society type of trope involved. And it just sounds so fun. And especially I think for fall. this would be a really good book. And finally, in our fantasy category, The Will of Many by James Islington. Again, I've heard a lot of good things about this book, and the second book is now out, so I feel like this is all the more reason to finally read this. This is another one that I don't know a lot about going in, but I've just heard such good reviews, and I want to step more into that sci-fi and fantasy space. But I do know that our main character is kind of like lying about his intentions and trying to infiltrate like the government or like this elite group. The main magic system revolves around will, like your free will, I guess, as a form of magic or a form of like energy or power or something. Anyways, really excited to read this book. If you have read this and enjoyed it, please let me know down in the comments. Convince me to pick this up because this is a beefy book and very intimidating. Now onto our romance category. Just like with fantasy, there are a lot of books I want to read, but these are the ones that I'm most excited for right now. First of which is The Things We Leave Unfinished by Rebecca Yarros. I read The Last Letter by her this past year and but I really enjoy her Empyrean series, so I want to read more of her romance books. And this book is about a woman who goes home to her grandmother's estate or great-grandmother's estate after she passes and runs into our male main character who wants to finish the novel that her great-grandmother started. And so both of them kind of work together to finish this work, and as they're doing so, you get this kind of dual timeline of the present and then the great-grandmother's story, which they come to realize is actually her love story in World War II. Yeah, her love story with a World War II pilot. And so you get two love stories, both the historical fiction and like more contemporary dual timeline throughout the narrative. And I just love that concept. I really enjoy Taylor Jenkins Reid and that kind of interview or reliving the past type of storytelling. And I love the idea of like an older romance mixed in with a new one too. Speaking of Taylor Jenkins Reid, the next book is When True Loves by her. And I've read Seven Husbands of Evelyn Hugo, Daisy Jones and the Six, Malibu Rising, and I really want to read Atmosphere. Spoiler alert for one of the books I'm going to talk about here soon. But I haven't read any of her earlier contemporary romance books, and this one specifically has the most intriguing plot to me. We have our female main character who's married to the love of her life, and then her husband suddenly passes. Years go by, and she's moved on, she's engaged to someone else, and then her husband comes back, and turns out he was just missing all this time. So then she has to decide between her husband, the love that she lost, and her fiance, which is the love she currently has. The premise sounds really good. It also sounds like it could be a tearjerker potentially, but I've loved anything that Taylor Jenkins Reid has written so far, so I'm really interested in reading her contemporary romances. And then we have Ashley Poston, Sounds Like Love. This book is a contemporary romance and has little sprinkles of magical realism, and in this book both the female and male main characters have this song stuck in their head. They have like a telepathic connection in the way that both of them have the exact same song, and so they work together to actually write the song and put that melody to words. I'm a songwriter, so this sounds like such a fun premise for a rom-com, and I'm really interested to read it. This is definitely going to be a book that I try to read sooner this year. And then we have The Do-Over by Lynn Painter. This would be a really good book to pick up around Valentine's Day because it is set on Valentine's Day, and only Valentine's Day to my knowledge, where our female main character keeps reliving the same Valentine's Day. So it's similar to the whole Groundhog's Day concept, but on Valentine's, and there's a little rom-com story to go along with it. I really enjoyed Better Than the Movies. I also read Betting on You last year, and it was okay. Didn't love it as much as Better Than the Movies, but loved it enough to want to continue to pick up some of her young adult rom-coms. And then finally for the romance category, we have Happy Place by Emily Henry. I have still not picked this book up, which shocks me because I've read a few of her other books, and Beach Read has been my favorite Emily Henry book, and it was the first one I read. I have a feeling that I'll really love this book, so I'm waiting till summer comes back around. And some of the other people I've heard talk highly about this book, I share similar book tastes, but also this book is is a second chance romance, and I'm really interested to see how she executed that. And I'm always intrigued by second chance romances in novels because the love story that I have with my husband actually also involves second chance romance. So I love to see when that comes to life in a story. And then we have the literary fiction category, which is only 4 books, one of which I do not own yet, but it'll be one that I purchased this year. And that is The Woman by Kristen Hanna. I read The Nightingale right before Thanksgiving. I finished that book as I was traveling home to see family for Thanksgiving. Big mistake because I ended up crying on the airplane. But it was my first Kristen Hanna book, and I absolutely love her writing and can't wait to dive into another one of her books. And The Women is the story that intrigues me the most of some of her other work right now. And it's based in the Vietnam War, I believe, with a group of women, and that's all I know. So kind of going into it blind, but honestly, after reading The Nightingale, I will pick up anything that she's written because The Nightingale was my #1 read last year. So, and then we have The 5 People You Meet in Heaven by Mitch Albom. I feel like some people may be familiar with this author from the book Tuesdays with Morrie, and if that was assigned reading for school, but this book specifically, the concept really pulls me in. The whole idea is that when you get to heaven, there's going to be 5 different people. I believe it's the people that you impacted on earth, and some may be people you know, and some may be people that you literally had one conversation with. So you don't really know who those 5 people are going to be, and I just think this will be a really interesting and thought-provoking book. And then we have Deep Cuts by Holly Brickley, and I actually picked this book up because I heard Haley Pham talk about it. And again, it's another music-driven story. I don't really remember much about the synopsis, but I believe that there is a love story involved and kind of travels along the music journey, so the process of creating music. Yes, it's like a partnership between these 2 college students and how their partnership spans years, igniting new passions, collaborating and working together. Again, my musician heart was really pulled towards these kinds of stories. And then the last one for the literary fiction category is another Taylor Jenkins Reid book, and this is Atmosphere. This is her most recent release, and it came out in 2025, and I just haven't had a chance to read it, but anyone who I have heard talk about it has reviewed it highly. But this novel is set in the 1980s. Our female main character comes across an advertisement seeking the first women scientists to join NASA's space shuttle program, and honestly, I picked it up purely because Taylor Jenkins Reid wrote it. So excited to get to this. And then finally, our mystery and thriller category, the first of which is Billy Summers by Stephen King. Billy Summers is like a hitman, essentially. And really, I just want to read this book because I haven't read any Stephen King before, and I'm not a horror person, so approaching it more from his thriller books, I think I'll enjoy, and I've heard good things about this novel specifically. And then we have The Guest List by Lucy Foley. I've had a few coworkers who have been talking about this book and how good it is. It's really short, quick read, but it takes place during a wedding. There's multiple different point of views, and someone is a murderer, but they all have a secret, they all have a motive, and just trying to figure out who the killer is. So it sounds like a fun murder mystery. Again, probably a good book for fall, but I may read it sooner. And then finally, we have The Naturals by Jennifer Lynn Barnes. This is a book that has been sitting on my to-be-read list through this past fall and into the winter, but I really want to read this series. I loved reading The Inheritance Games in college, and the idea of teenagers with special abilities working as part of a CIA program just sounds fun. This is the kind of mystery book that I love. And that's about it for the 26 books that I want to read in 2026. Really, my reading goal is 75 books this year, so I'll definitely have time for all the books I mentioned, and hopefully many more. But if there are any books specifically that you think I should get to sooner rather than later, let me know down in the comments. Otherwise, I will see you next week with another video. Bye, friends!